Today on InvestigateTV, voting, a constitutional right, but casting a ballot is a major obstacle if you can't read. We speak to advocates improving the process for low literacy voters.
I always had the fear when I was in the booth was that I would be in there for a long time and people were coming and going and coming and going, and I'm still there. That was intimidating to me.
Plus, teens in state custody are running away and falling victim to sex trafficking, why they're running, and who's supposed to be watching them.
Most young people that we worked with who are trafficking victims, they have had experience in the foster care system.
And homeowners losing their properties, houses auctioned off for unpaid taxes, and why one local government is buying up properties but losing out on cash.
And I said, how could you sell my property without me knowing? I hadn't received any notices.
InvestigateTV starts right now. Hello and welcome to InvestigateTV. I'm Lee Zurich. Millions of Americans struggle with literacy. A 2020 Gallup poll shows more than half of U.S. adults read below a 6th grade level. When Election Day comes, the voting booth can be intimidating. It's not just the stigma. There are rules in place that make it difficult to get and offer help at polling stations. Carice Jackman teamed up with ProPublica to learn about this problem and potential solutions. Hear what they uncovered in Right to Read.
This is my daughter.
78-year-old Faye Combs is proud of her life. She's a wife, a mother. But for decades, she's lived with a secret she kept from the one she loved.
I was married 7 years before he even knew I couldn't even read or write.
Reading is a skill Faye feels people take for granted.
You don't hear it. It's not a dinner table discussion.
A skill she says she lost as a little girl.
I had a trauma in my life when a very early age, like 7. And in my trauma, which I was raped, I erased all of that. And in erasing all of that, I erased all the skills that I had learned from kindergarten up to that point.
It wasn't until Faye was 40 years old that she finally opened up and got a tutor.
I talked to this lady. I didn't know this lady, had never met her, but I just poured out my story because I was desperate. I really wanted to be better and do better.
Faye says one of the many problems she faced as she struggled with reading was voting. She says it was hard finding the strength to not only say, I can't read, but to also reach out for help and understand what's on the ballot.
I always had the fear when I was in the booth was that I would be in there for a long time and people were coming and going and coming and going, and I'm still there. That was intimidating to me.
Faye isn't alone. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, 1 in 5 Americans struggles to read English at a basic level. The question is, how does that impact participation in elections? Our partners at ProPublica analyze voter participation and literacy data for more than 3,000 counties across the U.S. and found areas with lower estimated literacy rates tend to also have lower voter turnouts. In fact, according to their analysis, if low literacy counties had similar turnout rates to high literacy counties in 2016, 18, and 2020, they could have added up to about 7 million votes nationally each year. And while there are many factors that play into whether a person votes, including transportation and the ability to get time off work, ProPublica found that increased participation in low literacy counties could have the power to swing close races.
The ultimate test is, what is society doing to make it better, to fix it?
Across the country from Faye Combs, about 3.5 hours south of Atlanta, is Coffee County, Georgia, Olivia Coley Pearson's home. She's not only a city commissioner, but a voting rights advocate. Her fight to help people at the polls has come under fire. Pearson was criminally charged in 2 separate incidents, accused of illegally helping people vote in both the 2012 and 2020 elections. In the first incident, she was tried and acquitted. In the second, the charges were dropped after she agreed to follow all election laws.
What are you hearing from people when they say they're nervous about voting or they are apprehensive about going to vote and they can't read or write?
They feel like society shuns or look down on people who can't adequately read and write. That's why I'm there whenever I can be to encourage them that, this is your right to vote.
Throughout our nation's history, literacy and the right to vote have been used as tools for discrimination. During the Jim Crow era, states and counties across the South created restrictions like literacy tests to make it difficult for African Americans to vote. The fight for equal rights at the polling place led to the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which prohibited racial discrimination in voting. Federal law allows voting assistance for people who are blind, disabled, and who are unable to read. But Coley Pearson says roadblocks at the polls still linger.
And it seems to me like a lot of the people are trying to keep the illiterate people from being able to vote by making laws more stricter.
In a 2001 case, the federal Justice Department claimed white poll managers in Charleston County, South Carolina, were intimidating black voters who requested assistance. A federal judge ultimately found there was significant evidence of intimidation and harassment, but said the mistreatment was too anecdotal to take direct action. And in 2021, Florida expanded the area around election locations, prohibiting volunteers from asking people if they need help.
Give it up for Coffee County!
It's issues like these, Olivia Coley Pearson says, she's battled time and time again.
Do you feel like it's a form of voter suppression?
I know it's a form of voter suppression. I don't feel like it. I know it is.
Advocates say in order for the voting experience to improve for voters who struggle to read, ballots need to be more accessible.
Maybe you don't have to say amend the Constitution. You could say change the Constitution or change a law. Being conscious of writing so that people who don't read well can understand it, so people who don't learn best by reading can understand it.
Whitney Quisenberry and her colleagues at the Center for Civic Design have assisted numerous states, working with local election officials to create materials to help Americans with reading challenges understand the voting process. She says when state and local voting changes are made, it's important for agencies and election officials to spread the word, going to areas which may not have the resources to get the information.
It's easy for an election official to reach your local Center for Independent Living. But what about people who aren't going to that center, right? How do you reach the people who aren't visible in the community?
Ashamed no more, Faye speaks out, traveling the nation, speaking with lawmakers about why it's important to reach out and listen to those who struggle with reading and writing.
Everybody doesn't have a computer. Oh, go to the website. Everybody doesn't have a computer. Oh, you can do it. It's easy. No, it is not easy. If you don't know how to, it's intimidating to those of us that do not.
She also shares her story with those battling the same fight she eventually won, letting them know no matter what their reading comprehension is, they too have the right to read and to vote.
For more on this investigation, including the full ProPublica story and voter accessibility guide, search Right to Read on InvestigateTV.com. Foster kids living in county government offices for weeks, sometimes months at a time. Up next, we investigate reports of fights, drug abuse, and runaways involving kids in state care. Welcome back to Investigate TV. Georgia's foster care system is overburdened. Minors are living in family and child services offices, kids sleeping on blow-up mattresses, reports of fights, stealing, and drug use. And when these teens run away, they find themselves in even more danger. Sierra Cummings from our Atlanta station has more.
She's a critical runaway with mental health issue.
It was not the first time.
She ran from the post office 4 days ago.
It would not be the last.
Police.
But it did spark a police investigation. The case of a child missing from a DeKalb County Department of Children and Family Services office. An office she was living in, a building not even meant for living or raising a healthy child. So she ran away from it.
There's a lot of trauma for her.
Hoping to be a change in the foster care system, Colleen adopted her child in 2017. A young girl, she says, survived years-long sexual abuse.
So since 12 years old, while some people are like in football, soccer, cheerleading, she was learning how to use her body.
Exactly.
It led to mental and behavioral health issues for the now 15-year-old, which landed her before a juvenile court judge. As we uncover, the court cases typically end in two ways: go to a detention facility or into DFACS custody. Judges choose what they consider the lesser of two evils, DFACS custody. It's what happened for Colleen's teen. Few resources, few placement options leave kids in state custody, living in local DFACS county offices.
They're not getting help at all.
Records we obtained show in Fulton County the longest overnight office stay was nearly 3 months. In DeKalb, nearly 2 months. Police records show children doing drugs, stealing, sexual promiscuity, attacking workers, attacking each other, or running away.
They're out there selling their body.
Colleen alleges after her daughter took off from the DFACS County office, she was immediately sex trafficked. It allegedly happened nearby.
The motel is here in the Panthersville area, along Ember Drive next to blighted and abandoned properties. Police warn even me to not go by myself, let alone a teenager. DeKalb officers found the child alone in a motel room here with the 52-year-old man.
Personally, I wouldn't feel right being a 15-year-old.
Did anything go on in there between you and the gentleman's side? It's just a yes or no question, that's all. No? Okay. So you good? All right.
The man claimed he was innocent.
I think it's bull.
Yeah.
I think he probably saw her out and about.
611 217, placed on your screen to be handled via 21406.
The DFACS caseworker who later met the officer and the child at the hospital shared this concern.
And then she also has a history of sex trafficking. So that's why I did advise my supervisor to bring her here.
This summer, the FBI rescued nearly 30 Metro Atlanta children sex trafficked in hotels. The agency confirmed at least 3 were identified as runaways from DFACS custody.
Most young people that we worked with who are trafficking victims, they have had experience in the foster care system.
Jennifer Swain is the director of Youth Spark, a center for child sex abuse survivors, providing holistic services to kids. Swain advocates the development of new organizations like hers to stand in the gap.
Unfortunately, we don't have enough resources.
In 2002, Children's Rights Incorporated filed this lawsuit against the state for its housing conditions of DeKalb and Fulton fosters. More than 20 years ago, children who could not be placed were sent to shelters, plagued with similar problems like today's offices: drugs, abuse, violence.
It's been happening for years.
Georgia State Representative Shelley Hutchinson.
A situation clearly worse than I thought.
The lawmaker sits on the state's Health and Human Services Committee, which creates solutions for agencies including DFACS. She vows to work for new mental, behavioral, and placement facilities for fosters.
If we can focus on this issue, then maybe we can get money in the budget to create some of the places that we need.
You have to be the one to tell us.
They're not in a facility where they could get help. They're supposed to be having counseling. Also, they're supposed to be in school, and they're not. They're in the office.
That lawsuit put the state and DFACS under required monitoring for improvements, monitoring that's still required even today. Now, as for long-term solutions for housing these foster children and potential funding, we'll just have to wait and see come the next legislative session here. DFACS did send us a statement saying, in part, they provide services proactively and services to respond when they learn a child has been sex trafficked.
To keep up with our latest investigations, follow us on social media. We are at InvestigateTV on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Up next, properties put up for auction to recoup money and back taxes. We take you to a community where the buyer of the homes is the same one putting them up for sale. That's after the break. Welcome back to Investigate TV. In the height of the pandemic, the federal government issued eviction and foreclosure moratoriums. People could not be kicked out for missing rent or mortgage payments, but they could lose their homes for unpaid taxes. In Tennessee's Shelby County, thousands of properties hit the auction block. You might be surprised by who was buying them. Our station in Memphis conducted an investigation with the University of Memphis's Institute for Public Service Reporting. Jessica Jaglois has the details.
When Archie Robinson moved into the childhood home he'd inherited from his mother, he also took on her tax debt.
And they told me the taxes were behind, so I said, okay, well, let me try to catch up.
Robinson says his mom owed thousands in property taxes, so he paid what he could to preserve his home and all the memories inside. When the back taxes totaled nearly $5,000, his home was put up for auction.
I think it's unfair and unfortunate.
In Tennessee, a trustee can take possession of someone's property and then sell it to recoup unpaid property taxes in what's called a tax sale. Robinson's home was one of nearly 400 properties that were sold in a Shelby County tax sale in February 2021. Property management company Red Door Memphis purchased Robinson's home and 4 others in that tax sale. Red Door, which states on its website that its mission is to glorify God by providing good housing at a good value, then asked the court to evict Robinson.
Some young lady served me some papers stating that someone had bought the home, and why was I here, and who was I?
While Robinson borrowed money to buy back his property, another home that Red Door purchased in that tax sale was listed for rent on its website for $1,500 a month. Who profits from tax sales?
First and foremost, it is the investors.
Andrew Carl is a professor of history and African American studies at the University of Virginia. He studies inequality in real estate.
There's a lot of evidence to show that tax sales have really become a sort of predatory marketplace for investors.
That may be the case, but we found most properties sold in Shelby County tax sales aren't purchased by investors, but are acquired by Shelby County itself. What does that say to you, the fact that our government is purchasing most of these tax delinquent properties because there simply is no other bidder?
That's showing you that the system's not working.
Our analysis of the more than 8,000 properties sold in tax sales between 2016 and 2022 shows Shelby County came to own more than 5,500 of them, nearly 70%. Shelby County does end up bidding or purchasing most of the properties that go up for tax sale. Why is that?
A lot of these are what you'd call distressed properties. It's either a house that's not in great shape or maybe a vacant lot, and there just aren't enough investors who want to buy all those.
Attorney Jack Turner litigated tax delinquency cases for the Shelby County Trustee's Office until this past spring. He says the county acquires the majority of tax sale properties simply because there are no other bidders.
A lot of investors, I guess, feel there are better investment opportunities outside of a tax sale.
Turner says the goal of a tax sale is to recoup unpaid property taxes, but we found the county recovers barely a fraction of the taxes it's owed. For example, this trustee's report for the August 2020 tax sale suggests there were nearly $7 million in bids. But a separate report shows Shelby County actually recovered less than $800,000 in back taxes for that sale. 40 properties were purchased by individuals, but Shelby County was forced to take over the remaining 200 or so properties. It's important to note that Shelby County doesn't actually spend money purchasing these properties. It assumes ownership of them, moves them to the county land bank, where anyone across the world can buy them online.
And then the land bank tries to sell them as best they can.
However, we found several properties in the land bank that sold for a lot less than the taxes owed. The owner of this lot on Davis Street owed more than $19,000 in property taxes. After it didn't sell in August 2020, a Florida-based company bought the lot 10 months later from the land bank for just $500.
Never, ever puts anybody out on the street.
Turner points out Shelby County doesn't evict, while investors can. Robinson feels lucky to have redeemed his childhood home before the eviction went through, but between interest and fees, he had to pay more than just the taxes he owed.
I feel cheated, I really do.
Our station in Memphis reached out to Red Door Memphis for comment, but did not hear back. Some cities are taking steps to protect homeowners. New York City's tax lien sale program expired in February of 2022. Baltimore pushed back its 2022 tax sale, giving people more time to catch up on payments. The city has also removed owner-occupied properties from the sale. If you're looking for more investigative reporting on demand, download our streaming apps on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV. Coming up, planning for your family's future, the big financial choices you'll need to make during life-changing moments. Welcome back to Investigate TV. We all want to make sure our loved ones are taken care of after we pass away, but only 33% of Americans have an estate plan. That's according to a recent survey from caring.com. Rachel DePompa tells us why drafting a will should be a top priority in this Watching Your Wallet.
Having a will is one of those often overlooked steps in life. It is critically important. Think about it. If you die with no plan in place, you could be leaving a mess for your family. Patrick Hicks is the head of legal with Trust and Will, an online service that allows you to create estate plans, wills, and/or trusts. He says in most states, you can have a will as young as 18 years old. He's also well aware creating a will is not top of mind for an 18-year-old.
So if you're, 25 and you're maybe looking and you're getting married and starting a family, that's the time to start putting a plan in place. It doesn't have to be complicated, and you may not need it immediately, but you need it in place just in case.
He says once you have a family and other people to care for, having a will is critically important, and it's not one and done either. You have to review it every few years.
You can have a will when you're 30 years old, and it may be good for you at age 30. But 10 years go by, you may need a different set of plans. So have a plan in place, but review it every 5 years or so and just make sure that it evolves with your life.
He also says it's a big misconception that creating a will is a hassle. He says in this day and age, you don't have to search for a lawyer or even meet in person. You can do it all online at sites like Trust and Will or LegalZoom. With this Watching Your Wallet, I'm Rachel DePompa.
Thanks, Rachel. Education is another key part of planning your children's future. High school students prepare applications and study for the SAT and the ACT. Some parents are saving up for tuition using a 529 college savings account, an account that provides tax advantages for education savings. Robert Farrington, founder of The College Investor, says you have options.
You could use a 529 plan to pay for K through 12 private education. You can use it for trade school, vocational schools. You can actually even use a little bit of it for student loan repayment in the future.
Also, if one child doesn't use all the money, you can change the beneficiary to another child. You can even change that beneficiary to grandchildren down the road. That's going to do it for this edition of Investigate TV. We hope to see you again next week.